Shabbat Shalom. As the fourth speaker today, I hope you'll excuse, maybe even appreciate the brevity of my remarks. But on this first Shabbat, back at IKAR after a month in Israel with my family, I wanted to share a few reflections from our time there. I don't intend these remarks as a sweeping political analysis of the war with Iran. Rather, I hope to share a bit of what I saw and what I heard as both an offering of the heart and a glimpse into life in the shadow of war. We arrived in Israel on a Friday, 4 days before the wedding, 6 days before the war. We left Israel on a Sunday, 6 days after the war ended, whatever that actually means. To be honest, I'm still not sure what parts of me are here or there, or what is forever changed by proximity to war. I know that I'm incredibly grateful and relieved to be here with you today, safe. My family is safe, alive. And I'm so sad that the people I love are having the life wringed out of their bodies through perpetual war. And then there's all the people I don't know, I'll never know, wherever you are, a catalog of tragedies I try to cram into my heavy heart because in war, the circumference of suffering is always bigger than one can imagine. I'm always struck by the dissonance between the Israel of the headlines and the everyday life that nonetheless continues. A dissonance felt sharply at the joyous wedding of Ilana's cousin, Chen. It was a classic Israeli wedding. It started 2 hours late. I came home with 30 photo magnets, and the amount of food was only topped by the amount of joy felt from the chuppah to the dance floor. We break a glass at a Jewish wedding, a poignant reminder, even as we celebrate of the brokenness of our world. And that happened along with the Rabbi's traditional explanation, connecting the ritual with the perpetual mourning for the destruction of the temple. But it was another moment during the chuppah where the mood actually shifted. Before the 7 blessings, he prayed for the hostages and their return. He prayed for the soldiers in harm's way, for the reservists, including the bride and the groom, whose lives have been a split-screen reality for the past 2 years. He prayed for peace, and for a moment, the chuppah was quiet. I wondered what images raced into the mind's eye of the people gathered there. The faces of loved ones lost to war. Friends who should have been at this wedding who never returned. I wondered what it meant to dream of peace without naming who you're making peace with. 2 nights later, we were jolted out of bed in the middle of the night by the terrifying and life-saving sound of our phones alerting us to make our way to the nearest bomb shelter. It sounds like a series of amber alerts, different alarms indicating how much time you have to make it to the shelter before the potential impact of an incoming missile. We scooped up our sleeping children and went to the basement and into the shelter, a 2 by 8 foot room with thick concrete walls and a metal door. With us were my in-laws and our incredible hosts, Yafa and Moshe, who opened their home in Hod HaSharon for us for the whole month. We turned on the radio and learned that Israel had launched an extensive Air Force campaign against Iran, and we were bracing for their response. Over the next 12 days, a number which now feels impossibly low relative to the pace of time within, we made around 60 such trips to the shelter, mostly at night, 4 to 5 times each day. I want to offer 3 reflections from this experience. Number 1, the first night, when our 8-year-old Ziva asked us why we were there, I said, "You know how at school during an earthquake drill, you go to the safest place in the building? This is kinda like that." To our amazement, she didn't ask another question until the next night when once again we woke her from her sleep and huddled in the bomb shelter. This time, we heard a loud boom. She asked, "Is that a bomb?" My eyes met Ilana's, a silent acknowledgement that there's only so much you can do to protect your children from the scariness of the world. Ilana calmly said, "Yes, but the fighting is far away." Over the course of 12 days, that answer was sometimes true and sometimes not. We were about 20 minutes from Tel Aviv, where the pictures of city blocks reduced to rubble sent chills throughout my body. The feeling of sitting in the shelter with your children, hugging them tight through the booms, through the quiet, between the explosions, is a kind of vulnerability I had never experienced before. An utter powerlessness to control the most significant threats to your safety. All you can do is try to keep calm, tell stories to your kids, sing, pray, breathe. And thank God for little Luna, 2 years old and entirely awake through every trip to the shelter, who asked us to sing every night, "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands." Number 2. In retrospect, it's frightening how war can narrow your range of concern. I'm not proud to say this, but it wasn't until the 3rd day of the war that I realized that there were families just like mine on the streets of Tehran, facing an objectively scarier reality than what I and my family were experiencing. I had a shelter to go to, a privilege even within Israeli society. I had warnings of when the missiles were coming. I had a refrigerator stocked with food. And of course, I prayed that no harm should befall them. But I also prayed that the IDF be successful in destroying Iranian missiles and rocket launchers. And it is deeply confusing when your family is at risk to know how those two prayers intertwine. And this narrowed range of concern wasn't only about Iran. For 12 days, I heard very little about Gaza and almost nothing, I'm pained to say, about the dozens of Gazans killed every day by the IDF at the increasingly dangerous aid collection sites. The attention of the country was elsewhere. I found among good and decent Israelis and felt within myself little ability or willingness to consider the suffering of others. It's hard to see expansively from the confines of a bomb shelter. And I say all of this without blame or judgment, but instead as a painful reflection on the soul-crushing consequences of perpetual war, of which I experienced just a fraction of the fear that Israelis and their neighbors have now felt for too long. Which brings me to my 3rd reflection. Despite what they say when you ask them how they're doing, Israelis are not fine. Rabbi Ronit once told me that FINE is an acronym for feelings I'm not expressing. Hakol Beseder is a deflection, and perhaps it feels like a necessary one, but it comes at a terrible cost. I felt in my own small way how I kept the emotions, the fear, the sadness, the anxiety at bay while the bombs were falling. Keep it together for the kids, you tell yourself. In fight or flight, there's no time, there's no capacity to engage with the depths. On the 12th day of the war, We woke up to a siren at 6:55 a.m. As we made our way to the shelter, we read the confusing texts from family and friends that a ceasefire had been agreed to, coming into effect in 5 minutes. After an hour, we exited the shelter, unsure what the day would bring, unsure whether to be hopeful or not. The siren went off again at noon. But by 7 p.m., the Israeli government announced that the ceasefire was in effect. All businesses can reopen tomorrow, kids can go back to school, and the airport will reopen back to normal, they said. The whiplash was intense. The next morning, Ilana woke up with a fever and chills, and she couldn't stop crying all day. To her great credit, a testament to an integrated body, mind, and soul, she had lifted the seal on her emotions, letting 12 days of heartache come through. But what happens to a society when the trauma is so persistent and unrelenting? What happens when the cycle of sealing away your emotions has happened so many times that you no longer know how to break the lock? I understand in a new way why our tradition links a hardened heart with the capacity to inflict violence. A hardened heart bursts with anger because it forgot how to cry with sorrow. We sometimes use the term loss of life to enumerate the casualties of violence, as if life is only a light switch, either on or off. But during war, life is lost in so many ways. Life can become scared of the dark. When the missiles rain down and sleep feels reckless, life jumps out of your body at the sound of an explosion. Life can be hollowed out. Human beings becoming shells of themselves, mirrors of the bombed-out craters in the ground. How do you reclaim life when death hovers? How do you breathe life into the souls of people who have been holding their breath for years? At the end of our trip, when it finally felt safe to leave the shelter and drive an hour to Jerusalem, we visited the Kotel. Our 6-year-old, Matan, who'd never been there before, spotted a dove perched in the corner of the wall on a patch of dried grass. He asked me if that was the same bird from all those years ago that flew back to Noah's Ark. Olive branch in beak, to tell Noah and his family that the destruction was over. I told him it was. And I told him to look for that bird everywhere he went. That if he can't find it, ask a friend to help him find it. Because it's always there. Sometimes hiding or too scared to come out, but if you learn its song, maybe you can help it fly once again. And if enough of us learn its song, if enough of us never give up on finding it, maybe the destruction can stop again. And maybe we can all begin to breathe again, to live again. Shabbat Shalom.
This is Rabbi Sharon Brous, Rabbi at IKAR, where we're dedicated to reinvigorating Jewish community, ritual, and learning, all while laying the foundation for a just and loving society. You're listening to IKAR's podcast, where you can hear our sermons from Shabbat and holidays, our teachings, our guest speakers, basically anything we think worth hearing that we can capture and stream, you can listen to right here. The whole Megillah. I mean, literally the whole Megillah. So thank you so much for being with us.